We'll call the meeting to order for the Lancaster Criminal Justice Commission. Brett, you want to do a roll call?
Commission members Augusta, Brown, Goepel, Greer,
Present.
Harris, Vice Chairman Vieira,
Present.
Chairman Christ.
Present.
We do not have a quorum. We will not be taking action on items. However, we can discuss the items that are on the agenda.
Okay, if we could rise, and Dr. David Vieira is going to do the pledge for us.
Please place your hand over your heart and join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And please remain standing while Pastor John Metters do our invocation.
Let's pray. Lord, we thank you that we can come before you today and present a request to you. And Lord, I ask that you would just bless each one on this commission, Lord, and give them wisdom and direction in the things that they do and decide. I thank you for all those that serve our city so well, the peace officers and the firefighters and medical personnel. I pray that you would be with them today, Lord God, strengthen them. And Father, be with those who've lost loved ones in service to our country, that you would comfort them and be with them with your presence. Bless this meeting, we pray in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Due to the fact that we don't have a quorum, I've asked the Planning Commissioner Sandy Smith to sit with us and ask some questions if she has any questions, because she has been nominated for participation in the Criminal Justice Commission. So welcome today, Sandy. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Okay, so we can't do that, right? I think we're going to wait for Concepcion if she gets here, and we'll move the business down to after the reports for the goals. So if we can get the report on the non-revocable parole presentation, and he won't be here.
He might show up, so maybe
Okay.
yeah.
Mr. Capel's wife had surgery yesterday, so he will not be available.
Okay, let's move right into the monthly crime statistics. Jim? Oh, I'm sorry, Mark.
What I wanted to mention is that we're pretty excited where we are on what Jim and the Sheriff's Department have been working on. It's taken a lot of hard work and sort of learning experience on all of our part, including mine, but we've got to a point where we're very confident in the data analysis capabilities we have at the city with crime statistics now. Jim has, without going into the technical details, which I couldn't anyway if I wanted to, we have a new toy, if you will. We have capabilities. What we've now been working through Jim, Lee, and Axel is how do we use the capabilities that we have at the city to analyze data with the crime analysis capabilities at the station. And that's not as easy as it seems, because you need to make sure that you make it accessible to the investigators, to the deputies. You need to make sure that the data is there. You need to make sure it's still checked, all of those things. So that's what we're working on now. So it is a milestone in where we're at. We've gone from essentially building to now putting it in practice at the law enforcement level. Because it's good if we at the city have it, and you folks have access to it, and it's good if our code enforcement officers and our parking enforcement officers have access to all of this capability, but what we really want is our law enforcement folks to have access to the capability, because they're the ones that are the front line of defenders. So just wanted to give you a quick update on that. What I would also suggest, and I'm going to ask Britt to put on the agenda for your next meeting, is to give you an update of sort of in our budget. We'll be giving our council a budget briefing, and part of that will be public safety, some of the things we're doing in public safety. One is pretty exciting about sort of ramping up and going to the next level on our Neighborhood Watch program. So I'm going to ask Britt to put a public safety budget update on your next agenda for you. And with that, thank you for indulging my comments, and you can turn it over to Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Chairman Christ. We're looking right now in the data that I'm going to present for you for the period of March 28th through April 24th of 2010. As we look at the weeks, these comprise weeks 14, 15, 16, and 17 of the calendar year 2010. And for each of those weeks, you can see up there that we were fairly stable. You'll see in week 17 up there, looks like we kind of took a nosedive in crimes just a little bit. And essentially the way that last week works is we cut it off at the 24th, and what happens is in the next week, as the crimes come in for that week, some stuff will fall back into this week, so it'll probably end up being just about the same as the rest of these. But we're falling within a range of fairly complete data between about 74 and 80 Part 1 crimes per week. As far as arrests go, in looking at the arrest sheets, we saw reports coded that showed violent crime arrests in a range between about 5 and 14 for a high. Now, that doesn't mean that they didn't make arrests for other things or other things that were violent. It's just these are what fall into the Part 1 category according to their stat codes. And then as we take a look at their property crimes, we can see a range of between about 6 and 24 for those with the arrest data is a little more updated because we manually enter that ourselves, and we're probably only running a day or two behind where we're at in real time because we do enter it that way. Total arrests for the week, and of course this is a sum total of all of the arrest sheets that we have for that week. We're 192, 169, 240, and 216. When we take a look at the number of unique report numbers they had a range of between about 588 and 680. And that's pretty standard for the Lancaster station, so that's a good range for us to be in. The next slide takes a look at reporting districts, and for the veteran commissioners and perhaps Ms. Smith, you're aware that we have reporting districts that we count crimes by as well. And within the scope of those reporting districts, we can see that 1121 again finished number one for 2 of the 4 weeks that are being discussed here. And one of the things that we began to pick up on in this data is there seems to be not only the traditional 1121 and 1135 and 1137 in the data, but we're also beginning to see kind of a westward trajectory of some of the Part 1 crimes into some of the more western, or an increase in some of the western reporting districts. And I'll illustrate that on the map for you in just a few minutes. When we look at the most active reporting districts in total for the reporting period and crunch all the numbers together, we can see that 1127 and 1192 are at the top of the list with 28 Part 1 crimes apiece. Then we have 1121 and 1135 in second place with 26 crimes each. 1126 followed by 1132 and 1133. And if we went down a little bit further to about 18 crimes, we'd see the 1137 in there for this reporting period. Any questions on the reporting district or the breakdown in frequencies?
You're going to go through with westward movement?
Yes, I'll touch on that, sir. Before we get to that, I just want to run through real quick our 52-week chart, just so we're clear again. We're always in week 52 over here, or we're always looking at the data, and we're looking back 52 weeks. And within the scope of that, we have a trend line that's in both of the, or in all of the Part 1 crime categories. And that kind of gives us an idea of how statistically we're trending, either up, down, or we're flat. We can see because of a couple of events that we had now. This particular slide is of murder, and it's very important for us to understand that murder is a very low frequency crime in the city of Lancaster, and so if you have one or two within a really short period of time, that skews your numbers and makes it appear that you're really going higher, when in point of fact, if you compare it to overall last year's crime data, we may actually be flat or below. But because of the way that it fell in the calendar and the weeks, it gives the appearance that it's going up. And just a couple of frequencies in these low crime categories can cause that to happen. This particular slide is of rape, and the other thing that we have in these slides is our baseline, which is that blue line. And the baseline is, going back to 1997, a calculation of the average number of Part 1 crimes per week for the city of Lancaster in each category. So we know, basically going back to 97, and that takes us through the ramp up of the early 2000s and takes us back to a relatively lower frequency period, so we get both the lower and the higher times and everything else. So we can see in rape that we have gone through several fairly good weeks with regard to that, and we haven't. We have to go all the way back to probably week 46 before we get to a last spike in the data. So that's positive in the frequency of that particular crime. Now we get into robbery, and of course robbery is a little more frequent crime than that. Your property crimes, or excuse me, your crimes against persons tend to be a little less frequent than your property crimes, and so you'll see a lot of these spikes in the crimes against persons that kind of smooth themselves out just a little bit in the property crimes. You can see in robbery right now we're pretty flat. The trend line is running almost on top of the baseline. So right there we're maintaining roughly about where our average is. With assault, some good news there is you can see where the trend line is going with assault. So at least for Part 1 assaults, the aggravated assaults, those are trending downward. Burglary, while the trend line shows a slight upward trajectory, you can see that we're still well below the blue line, which is our baseline, and that's a good thing. So we will, again, those are some positive numbers for us. We get the larceny. You can see that, again, the trend line has a slight uptick to it, but the actual frequency numbers are well below the baseline, which the baseline in this particular category is just up over, or it's just over 40 per week. I think we were about 41.63 or something like that for our average, and we're staying well below that line.
And Jim, when you talk about your baseline, is that just the average over a period of time? Is that how you establish that?
It's the average for what our weekly average is. And then I update it every year when the UCR comes out. And the UCR should be out either later this month or the first part of June. And what I'll do at that point is we'll incorporate that number into the overall result. Grand theft auto, you can see back about week 42, 43, we had a pretty good spike in there, but since then we've managed to stay pretty much below the baseline. One of the things that's kind of interesting about grand theft auto for us in the city of Lancaster is you'll notice in there or periodically we get these pretty high spikes in there. And we've had conversation with the Sheriff's Department trying to to think of possible explanations why those particular, because you'll notice what follows it almost immediately is a big decline that's well below the average in there as well. And we don't seem to have hit that one. I mean, there's a lot of speculation, but nobody really seems to know. I mean, we think maybe it's kids swiping cars to take home. And again, as the Sheriff's Department says, they recover a lot of the vehicles stolen in Lancaster. So, there may be some credence to that, but we don't have any evidence in the data that shows that's what's happening. But there's a lot of belief that may be what's happening. And of course, arson is another one of those very low frequency crimes. We have just over, on average, 1 arson per week. So you can see what even 2 or 4 arsons do to our spike up there in 1 week. It just drives it way up. But right now we're down a little bit in arson, as you can see, over towards week 50 and 52. But again, you can see those couple of instances caused that trend line to spike up just a little bit. Any questions?
Jim, what might be interesting to see also is with schools letting out here at the end of the month, what impact, if any, that may be on the months of June and July as well.
Well, and frankly, that's one of the reasons why we're following a 52-week look back, is we can take into consideration what happened last year at this time. So, I mean, if we want to scroll up here and take a look, probably school let out around week 2, 3, or 4 on this chart up here, and this is of larcenies. So we don't know for sure what's going to happen this year, but we can take a look at that and see that well, there was a little bit of activity back then that almost brought us up to our baseline. Where prior to that, especially if you look at week 1 up there, you can see where we were, and so that is the very reason that we do this, so that we can at least learn from the most recent experience in that particular scenario. Other questions?
I'm just assuming that, so when we look at that data, does that translate into putting things into action to address that? I mean, if we know school's going to let out, and we know that there may be a correlation with increased larceny or whatever Part 1 crimes take place, does the Sheriff's Department then take a look at addressing that in any manner in a proactive way?
We have a meeting that follows this meeting a week later, and where we actually sit down and discuss this with the Sheriff's Department, so they can take it and they can use it. And with some of the new technology we've got, that we have the ability to track things and get the information to them more on a real-time basis. And those will be some of the things that we'll actually be talking at next week's meeting with them. The next thing that I wanted to talk about then is
Captain, did you have a...
Yeah, our core team is really heavily involved in this, and we're making sure they get these numbers. They go to briefings, they discuss this information with our special teams, the Berg team, the parolee apprehension team, LANCAP. So they're doing a real good job, and they're each responsible for one quadrant, and they kind of take responsibility for making sure the information, our data-driven information, is getting out to the troops that need to know about it. My one worry right now is that because of budget problems, we've got a little bit of a shortage of station clerks, and we're falling behind a little bit on data entry, and that really messes us up. Mark and I have talked about that, and we're going to do what we can to put a little pressure on Data Systems Bureau to see if we can't figure out a way to get a couple more station clerks out here and get to work on that. But it's a big problem right now with the budget issues.
And just to piggyback what the captain just said about the data entry, we're actually having those discussions here on how can we assist with this 6 to 7 day lag that we're having for some entry stuff, so we can help get this information more real time to feed that out to the crews. And, we're going to have to work, as we always do as a team, cooperatively here to try and resolve that issue to fill the gaps where they fall in some of this, okay, because it benefits us. So that's something a discussion that's ongoing right now. We just got to figure out how to work the ins and outs of that and that relationship, which we already have that relationship in many capacities with the Sheriff's Department, with the CSOs, and some of the other relationships that we have between the two agencies that we're going to find a way to fix it.
If you'll, go ahead, Chairman.
Lee, will you be giving us a presentation as far as the summary parole and how it's affecting us later in your presentation?
I have some things that I can tell you as far as what we did up front. The captain has some things regarding that as well.
So will that
And
be
then-
in your presentation?
Yes, I'll touch on some of that, but again, I'll leave the majority of that for when Don gets back, and as well as Jim Capel when Jim's able to come, because Jim really knows the whole nuts and bolts of that entire program and how it's being implemented through parole. I will touch on some of the things that we did preliminary and some of the cooperation we're having from corrections with that.
Okay, great.
One of the things this map, if you take a look at the map that's in front of you now, represents is kind of a threefold map. It looks at the old traditional pin type maps that law enforcement has traditionally used. You'd walk into a station house and you'd see a pin map on the wall. If you take a look at over on the right side of your map, you'll see crime classifications for April 2010. You'll see those crime classifications. If a crime did not occur, then you won't see the classification in there. These are for that time period of March 28th through April 24th. So it's not completely all of April, but there's enough overlap from March that we can put together 4 weeks. Again, that data issue is one of the things that kind of hampers us from getting into the following week. You can see where the crimes actually lay out on the map with that. You can see where the little symbols are. And that's kind of important for you to understand, because we're going to go back to that in a couple minutes. The next element of this map are the things that kind of look like little coffee spills on there, if you will, only they're different colors. Those are densities. And what those densities are not hot spots, but they're relative densities to show you the movement of crime from March to April. So what that's doing is it's taken the previous 4 weeks and comparing it to the current 4 weeks that we're looking at on the map. So where you see the green areas, that means in those little coffee spill areas, that means we're going down in those areas. Where you see the kind of pinkish color there, that means that those are the areas where the trajectory is going up, and where we need to kind of be aware of that.
So in 1123, that's the Parkview area, we're going down.
Well, according to the crime data. But bear in mind, that's time relative. That's comparing 4 weeks to 4 other weeks. So within the scope of that, that's entirely possible. The other layer to this map, if you will, is over on the left, the lower left, you see the Part 1 frequency by reporting district. And this is kind of a hotspot map, or frequency map, excuse me, not hotspot, I didn't say that. It's a frequency map for each reporting district, or a frequency color. So you can see within the scope of that for each reporting district, for example, if you take a look over to the far left, 1159, that area is the lighter green, not darker green. If you take a look at 1135, you'll see that that's red. So these are all color codings to show you within that reporting district, this is what's happening. And the actual frequency is illustrated down in the little legend in the lower left. Now, what I talked about earlier, and I was talking about the westward trajectory that we're beginning to see right now. If we begin to look at the two maps, This map that's on top up there is the one that I showed you in February. And within the scope of that map, you can see there was 1127 and 1126 on the west side of town that brought that red color in. And on the east side of town, we had 1135 and 1137, and those were the red ones. Even 1121 was just orange, I believe. It might have been red. But as we take a look at it in the most recent map, we begin to see the movement, particularly for these areas down here. We begin to see the movement. This 1192 pops in and was yellow before, which is a mid-range color, and by this time it's 1124 is orange, and then virtually all of the reporting districts over to the Quartz Hill area have gone red on us. And of course 1127 is kind of historically red because there's a lot of commercial establishments up on Valley Central Way, and a lot of those establishments do a really good job of like detecting shoplifting and things like that. So shoplifting, if we catch a shoplifter and we make an arrest, that doesn't really bother me as much as the larcenies that occur where there's unknown suspects and there's a 8-hour time frame or something like that. Those are the unknowns for us. Those are the question marks for us. And as we take a look at that map with the map from before, we can begin to see that westward progression. And actually, on the east side, things actually may be getting a little bit, or easing up just a little bit. For example, you take a look at 1137 over here, and that's gone from red to orange. So again, that suggests some kind of movement in the activity there. And that's about it for my presentation.
I usually don't need that, but anyway, Mark usually says that. As we utilize Jim's information and what Jim's putting forward here, there's a lot of other things that go into that, as the captain said, as it relates to CORE and how we get together with the task force groups and manage that information and use it appropriately out there. So we can see the trend. There's a lot of things that get involved in that. You know, what's the population density in that area? How is it made up? Is it single-family homes versus a lot of apartment multifamily issues? What schools are in the area? What issues are we having at the schools? There's a lot of different things that go into strategizing how we're going to deal with these issues. So that's an ongoing discussion that doesn't just take place once a month. That's a daily issue, that we have those conversations as it relates to this information. So we are actively using this information to go out there and identify issues. A perfect example, excuse me, Jim, just one last thing, was the Sheriff's Department came up with a great idea as it related to our spike in auto thefts. We made it a policy, and we're still doing that, to print every recovered vehicle. Every vehicle that was recovered in the field was printed. When we sent the CSS over to lift prints off it, and we used a third-party contractor to identify those subjects that were responsible for that where we could. That alone led to several arrests by the station, and I believe that has something to do, even though we do see a trend for a 52-week trend of a downturn after we have a spike, I think that's contributed to that. Okay, so we're being very aggressive right now on identifying who those car thieves are. So those are the type of things that come out of that. And so, again, it's an ongoing everyday issue as we interact all together out there in the public safety arena, and using those resources from all agencies out there to work collectively together to solve problems as we identify them.
Just wanted to add a couple other things too. If you take a look in the, for example, if you look at 1192 there, you can actually see on this map what's driving that crime. You can see in 1192, it's the...
Where is 1192?
It's in the, about the mid-range between 40th Street West and probably about 20th Street West, just north of Avenue M.
Thank you.
You can see on there the actual placement of the larcenies, and you can see that residential burglaries are also an issue down there, as well are burglaries of other structures. So this gives you an idea of the types of crimes that are being driven in those areas where you see the spike. One of the things that you can see behind me, Mark was talking about our ability to actually begin to forecast crime now. This is one of the ways that we can forecast. This particular data set or trend line starts on January 1st of 2000 and goes through the end of 2016. And essentially what we can do is we can say, based upon past events, this is the way that things are shake out. Now, what this is a monthly analysis. Now, obviously, when you start getting out much beyond a couple of months from right now, it starts getting real soft and real shaky. But if things continue the way that they are, you can see where we're headed with regard to a time series analysis of what we're doing. Actually, what we probably, a good target range for us in terms of Part 1 crimes to get down to an area below where we were January 1st of 2000 would be to get us into the, this is January 1st of 2016, get us somewhere into the 330 to probably 375, not crime rate, but Part 1 crimes per month. If we could reach that and hang on to that, we'd be in pretty good shape.
Is that taking into consideration the potential early release of parolees coming in? Is that
No. What this is a historical time series analysis, and so there are variables that play into that that could cause it to skew off. And that's one of the reasons why I said, when you start getting it more than a few months out, it starts getting fairly soft because it's becoming increasingly dependent on what's happened before. So just so you understand what you're looking at up here, the blue line is the actual frequency. The red jagged line is the forecast, and then this just smooths it out so you can actually see what the trend line is with that. And we're able to do this by week. We're able to do this by reporting district. We're able to do this sometimes in the reporting districts where where there's a really small value as far as crimes go. It gets a little soft. But in the higher value reporting districts where there's a higher number of crimes, we can take a look at that and make some fairly good forecasts. And really, the idea is not to make the number of crimes actually meet that forecast. If we come in below, that's a good thing, because what that means is we moved our resources, taking the knowledge of the forecast. I mean, it's like a weather forecast. When you go to work and you watch the weather forecast and it looks like rain, you want to grab your umbrella to keep yourself dry. Same principle applies here. If we get a forecast that says we're going to have a spike in X reporting district, then if the resources of the sheriff's departments are moved to that and we don't reach that level, then that's a good thing. And that helps keep us dry, so to speak.
On the other side, I'm looking at 1123. That's the Parkview, where we've put a lot of resources lately. Are we chasing crime out of there and they're going elsewhere?
When you start looking at this from a data perspective, if you take it purely from a scientific perspective, the answer to that question is we don't know. What we can say is that probably if there have been increased enforcement in that area, then the increased enforcement is being effective. Now, as to whether or not there's displacement going on, or as to whether or not there is something else, or they've just stopped, one of the things that we did recently, and there are a lot of things that go on outside of the city of Lancaster that impact us as well. I recently did a study for the city manager on larcenies, and what we saw was that auto larcenies were up just a little bit. And the issue was that was not just a city of Lancaster problem. If you've been watching the news lately, the entire Southern California area has been hit hard with these auto larcenies, to the point that they're actually putting it on their news every night. So that is something that probably is not just unique to us, but it's where we really are in or we're being impacted by the world that we live in as well.
We have Sheriff Department vehicles that have license plate identification equipment in them. How are they working out?
They're working out. The Alper cars are working out very well. The technology has not been perfected yet, but they're really good. For instance, in taking them down and parking them, say in strategically located spots at large parties and things like that. And they've helped us a couple times on investigations at 245s, because we now have a pretty good idea of all the cars were located there, and it gives our investigators something to get started on when they don't have much of anything else. But yeah, they're very helpful. They're not perfect, and they sometimes miss a few plates that we wish they were picking up. But we've utilized them in a variety of ways, and they work fairly well.
Thank you. I think it's important for us to note that when we do see a rise in crime in areas, it's because we're getting more equipment to help us make those apprehensions. So thank you for that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Can I just add one thing to what Lee said? The most important thing that we're trying to achieve as a city now is exactly what Lee said, which is make sure that this is day to day and hour to hour, and this is used for everything. And one of the benefits of having Mr. DeRico recently promoted to Public Safety Manager is we now have that better connection with the Sheriff's Department and city services to provide that and go after these things quickly. As you said, with more equipment and better strategies, we're doing a better job now. So I want to thank Mr. DeRico and Axel for really putting their heads together on cooperation better.
By having the station designated as a research and development station, is that helping get that equipment?
It is helping, and a good example of that is the Sky Sentinel program, which of course hasn't been brought to fruition yet. But what we find by having that designation is that the sheriff and the department in general recognizes that we want to be and should be a testing ground for all this new technology. And the sheriff is very supportive of the Sky Sentinel program, the Alper cars, and anything else that we want to do out here that has to do with technology. And we've noted it's helped us already. It really is, and I think it's going to be a huge help in the future, because there are a lot of things sort of sitting on the back burner right now that are going to be, they're going to be a part of our program out here in testing them out and seeing how well they work, and they're all going to help us. So
I understand. We had a presentation at the Sheriff Booster meeting today that we're the envy of the Palmdale, Santa Clarita stations because we have a lot better equipment.
We do, and that has more to do than just with the research and development station. We also have, as you know, a very effective booster club. So I thank you for that, Marv.
Okay. Jim, were you done? Thank you very much. And now, Mr. A.V. Lee DeRico, our new Public Safety Division Officer. Welcome, Lee. We could have Jason expound on your title.
No, we're done with this part of this.
Jason's
Complete advantage now.
Jason is Mr. Tehachapi, though.
Yes, he is.
No, it was Mr. Honor Roll All-Star. What was that part?
It was an honor roll, I can promise you that. But I will let you know that Dr. Vieira, the superintendent, wasn't on the honor roll either, so, if that means anything. And Mr. Greer wasn't either.
Didn't exist.
Sorry, sir, I'm just, reminiscing. I think just a couple of the items I'd like to touch on today. I want to bring you up to speed on where we're at on some of the issues as we work closely with the administration from the Housing Authority regarding some Section 8 issues. We met on the April 21st. Lieutenant Doughton and I went down and met with their legal staff and county council to discuss some of the protocols that were put in place for the investigators that basically dealt more with the administrative side of their program and how they were going to process complaints and how those complaints were handled in the field and then the process after that complaint. We have some fundamental differences, and I think, which is not uncommon when you have an enforcement agency trying to survive within a social agency. There's a lot of conflict and different philosophical views of how things should be managed. Out of that meeting, it was pretty much determined the county council is bringing things forward to the Board of Supervisors. And, of course, we have the support of Supervisor Antonovich in our area as on our enforcement effort. He actually works in cooperation with the city here in a partnership where we split the cost of the Section 8 investigators and their support staff 50-50 with the board office itself, not with the Housing Authority. So we have his support. However, we are lacking some of that same support for some of the recommendations to the Housing Authority from the other board offices. So that's the process we're working through now, is to meet with those board deputies from the other districts who are responsible for managing the Housing Authority and making them clearly understand the impact in our community. On top of that, we're soliciting other cities who are having similar issues throughout the county because, again, there's 60 contract cities within Los Angeles County that their areas are serviced by the LA County Housing Authority that are having the same issues we're having, mainly dealing with screening process, eligibility criteria, and portability. Portability means someone from outside the agency's jurisdiction that can move from another housing authority into the housing authority's area with their voucher. So they can move from wherever, Pennsylvania, and move to Los Angeles County with a voucher from Pennsylvania and be absorbed here. And the main focus of that is because it's a cost-saving measure for them because the process is not as involved as it would be with the new contract. But the biggest issue for us is it's not servicing our local community. Actually, we have about a 4-month trend where the majority of new contracts that were issued in our area were issued to participants from actually outside Los Angeles County. And a very small percentage were local residents. So that's part of the issues that we're having. In light of that, the Neighborhood Vitalization Commission has put together a list of 10 or 12 items that they're going to be addressing at the board with at a future board meeting. So I'm going through a process with them based on the items that they selected and meeting with those individual commissioners to give them talking points on each item as it relates to the discussion of that subject, and they're going to discuss that in a future Board of Supervisors meeting. And the beauty of that is they can do it downtown, or actually they have a satellite area here at the local library down the street where they can actually be involved in the meeting and speak to non-agendized or agendized items there. So that's the direction the Vitalization Commission's taking to voice the concerns here, and we'll move forward through that. Case in point, just to give you a recent example, we recently had a case where the city here received a complaint regarding a household here in the community about some unauthorized tenants and someone that the people actually identified as being a registered sex offender residing in that unit. The Sheriff's Department and the Housing Authority investigators went there. There was actually a parolee residing in the unit as well as a registered sex offender, and they arrested the parolee for ex-felon in possession of a firearm. And so the violation of parole and the 290 offense for living in the subsidized housing, which is unlawful. That case was sent downtown, and somehow through the process downtown and their current protocols where the investigators do not issue a field termination, proposed termination to start the process, it goes through a screening process down in Santa Fe Springs. Well, somewhere, someone dropped the ball. So that family is still residing in that unit. They have not gone through the termination process. There's still a number of unauthorized people living in that household, so we're having to readdress that issue. That's the problems we're talking about here. So in their process, we have these gaps that that are being dropped through their new protocol, that these things are not being handled expeditiously. And again, not that they have 170,000 people on a waiting list, so it isn't like they don't have enough people to fill vouchers, but they have quite a few. 7,000 of them being local residents. So it is an issue. Okay, so Neighborhood Watch, we actually had a meeting with our block captains. The Corps deputies were here. We've implemented a kind of a new direction plan for Neighborhood Watch and how we're going to manage it so we can expand it. We have a really good program that we want to make better. And to make it better, we have to change some things on the way we're managing that so we can reach more communities, individual communities throughout our city. So what we've done is we formulated a plan with the Corps deputies working in their 4 areas, and we're going to actually create zones within those areas that trickle down into the individual neighborhood watches. So we have kind of a hierarchy within the system for reporting and disseminating information. So we're going to hopefully be a lot more effective. I've already volunteered Dr. Vieira's school sites to have some of these area meetings within the community because they're going to be large, because we're going to open those to everybody, because we want to get people excited about becoming involved in their community and Neighborhood Watch. And as that works into our community-based plan, where we bring all these different things together with our Safer, Stronger Neighborhoods and our housing and revitalization program and land cap and the Top Bomb team and parolee apprehension, for all the resources that are out there, we need to bring that information out in a bigger form rather than 3 meetings a night, 5 days a week, to such small groups. Okay, so to reach everybody, we have to change the way we do business. And we got the block captains together. Mr. Bozigan came to speak to them. The block captains have given us input on that, which has been ongoing since we've had the meeting, and we're going to set up another meeting here so we can work collectively with them and be inclusive of all the people out there in the community to create this new program and how we want to do that. So just in the interest of, not that there was anything wrong with it, it was great, it was just not manageable. And we want to make it bigger, we have to manage it differently. Okay. Yes, Mark. That's good? Did I cover that one okay? I'm just kidding you.
Did you talk with them in regards to the CERT participation that we talked about?
Not yet, Mr. Chairman. That hasn't come into it. That will come into the fold. Actually, at the Poppy Festival, I was fortunate in the public safety area that I had the CERT guys right next to me. So I had 2 days of discussion with them while I picked on the firemen the whole time because that was my job. But they were great. But the CERT folks were pretty excited about expanding that out throughout the community and to get some more involvement. We're currently going through a disaster planning issues here at the city, and here starting at City Hall, and how that's going to reach out into the community. CERT definitely plays a big role in that, and those guys are excited about recruitment. In fact, they were actively recruiting people that came forward to the public safety booths, and they signed a few folks up. So that's a positive thing. We'll introduce that into Neighborhood Watch and invite them into that. Hopefully, the ideal situation would be to have them in their individual neighborhoods be their block captain to involve people that way. Okay, we have a focus now we're going to be putting together and working together with our Business Watch groups. We have some issues where we have certain policies in some of our larger stores in our area where they have kind of a stand-down loss prevention attitude, right? They don't actively pursue loss prevention. That's contributing somewhat to our rate of larcenies because it's pretty common knowledge out there in the criminal element on who the soft targets are and who are people you don't want to mess with. We want to go out there now and work in partnership with those businesses to create a more structured atmosphere for loss prevention, so they're actively managing that within their stores and take on that responsibility. And
we talked about that originally when we came onto the Criminal Justice Commission, and we also talked about identifying those stores. Mm-hmm. Your opinion on that?
Well, I think it's something that I think we need to take it in the spirit of cooperation initially, rather than, I don't want to out anybody at this point. I'd rather approach them, discuss the issue, how it's impacting us as a city, okay, and creating that atmosphere, and get them to understand that it impacts them as well, okay? Some of them literally have a stand-down order. They do not confront people that steal from their store, and it's ridiculous, and it becomes more of a liability issue they're more concerned about rather than actually taking an aggressive approach against crime. With the stance that we've taken in this community, and we've dedicated ourselves and resources to lowering the crime rate, that's an integral part of doing that. So I want to try and gain their partnership and have them work with us, and we'll work together to resolve those issues.
But part of gaining that cooperation is if they don't cooperate, I have no problem in making it public of who they are.
Okay, sir. And I think, that might be appropriate, given if that's the issue, I will definitely bring that forward. And at that time, whatever the commission deems is appropriate action to take, I'll support that and carry that out for you.
Thank you.
Can I add something to that, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
That's exactly the direction we're giving on staff, which is what Mr. DeRico said, which is you first have a chance to comply. If you're not complying and not helping, you're part of the problem. You're causing our crime rate to go up, and they will be outed. So they're going to have a chance to comply, but it's not going to continue the way it is now.
Great.
Okay, and on the last idea, on this non-revocable parole issue, it's quite interesting as you get into Senate Bill 18. I was going to print it out for you, but I realized it would have taken about 3 boxes of paper to print out just 7 of this Senate bill out. And as I told Chairman Chris before, if you want something that helps put you to sleep at night, just read that Senate bill, and I can get through about 2 pages and I'm snoring. But there's some real issues as it relates to that on the non-revocable parole side, and Corrections is actively working on some of those issues, because initially the screening process was only based on their current charge. Well, you could have a situation where you had someone in jail for assault with a deadly weapon or with great bodily injury, and their current case was for petty theft with a prior. Okay, based on the screening criteria, that person would have been eligible for unsupervised parole, but historically, as you read further into the bill, they're not eligible. So they have, out of the initial 690 people that were released in Los Angeles County, a certain number of them have been returned back to prison based on the appropriate criteria. But prior to this even being implemented, Captain Anderson, Lieutenant Doughton, and I actually had the undersecretary from CDCR come down here with the parole staff, and we talked about how we were going to work on this together and identify these issues, how it's going to impact our community. And with that, we have access to certain databases. The local prison provides us with their releases weekly here to us, and where these individuals are going and who their contact information is, and the parole agency themselves within parole are working actively on identifying where these folks are. Okay, so we know we have a general idea on their release where they are in the community. Now, from that point, they don't have to report to anyone where they move. Okay, hopefully that their new address will be Boucher Street in downtown Los Angeles, okay? But, that's kind of the idea if they're going to be problematic. But that being said, we do have a good relationship as that's going with the agency up in Sacramento. I think the captain can probably address that better than I can with his staff. We've got a significant amount of resources dealing with this issue, and so far it's working out. It's working out because we have that level of cooperation. Will that be maintained? I don't know. I mean, as this goes. I found out an interesting thing the other day as you read through this, and we met with probation. There's actually an incentive built into this bill with probation. If probation does not recommend state prison, probation is eligible up to 40% of what the cost is for incarceration of an inmate in the state prison system. So they actually have created a deterrent to an incentive for the county to not recommend state prison so they could receive money. Okay, now, it's in the law, so there's really nothing we can do other than legislatively deal with that issue. However, I feel that as a city, we're the ones spending the resources to deal with this issue, and so maybe we should get the money, okay? I mean, if it's law and we're going to have to deal with it, we certainly should be entitled to a certain percentage of those dollars and not making an incentive plan for the county to receive that money.
Isn't the whole Senate bill a reallocation of money?
Well, it is purely financially based. Okay, the whole point of that is how much it costs within the state to incarcerate people, and especially based on that, what they're entitled to through that. incarceration, you make an appointment with your doctor, you know how hard that is. Unless you're having some kind of emergency, it'll take you days. There's laws within the prison system that if an inmate has a complaint of pain, they have to see a doctor within 24 hours. There's all kinds of things legislatively bound to the prison system that makes it so expensive. So that being probably one of the larger budget issues for the state to contend with, this was the remedy by the legislature to alleviate themselves of that cost. But if they're going to create an incentive out there for probation and for the local agencies to bear that responsibility, then financially I think we should address that.
Okay.
Okay? That's all I had for today. I think Jim, Mr. Capel, can give you a really in-depth report on how the inner workings of that and how they're managing that within their department. I'm not aware of exactly how they're doing that and their protocol.
Thank you.
Okay?
Lee, I just had one question. Your
Yeah.
comments about the Section 8 as they related to our area here, you said that in the last 4 months that the majority of those new certificates or vouchers went to people outside of our area. When you say outside of our area, do you mean outside the Antelope Valley rather than Lancaster versus Palmdale, or?
I'm saying outside of L.A. County.
Okay.
They're not even residents of L.A. County. They were not prior to that. Part of the discussion, Mr. Bozigan's letter to Mr. Rogan, the executive director for the Housing Authority, was to regionalize the local office. There should be a hierarchy and process that we should have, that other cities do have within Los Angeles County that have their own housing authorities, where they can prioritize people on that list. In other words, like in the city of Pasadena, I always use for an example, they have a point structure. And if you're elderly and disabled, that obviously moves you to the top of the list, irregardless of when you've signed up. In L.A. County, it's purely on a rotation based on where you line up on the list and what date you signed up. So they currently have closed the list. They're now going through and clearing out that list because HUD demands that you be currently eligible. So in L.A. County's process, for example, it was a great retirement plan. If I want to retire from 10 years from now, I could go and step in front of one of the Antelope Valley transportation buses and get my leg run over or something and get SSI disability and apply for Section 8 now, and I'd be eligible in 10 years, and I'd just quit my job. You see what I'm saying? I mean, it was ridiculous the way they were managing that. That is against the law. That has been fixed, but we have a lot of other issues to deal with.
Does anyone have any questions for Lee? I'd like to welcome the captain of the CHP, Todd Hoos. And do you have any information to give us?
No, we just have summer coming. We're pretty focused on our high schools right now with all the kids getting out of school. Sober graduation. Have a few checkpoints coming up in August and September. That'll add to it. It'll be right in the community. But I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Are we going to do the comments from the floor, or did you guys want to do the? Okay, sure. This one.
Well, good morning. What I want to do is just take a few minutes to run down some accomplishments of our parole apprehension team over at Lancaster Station. I was going to bring Greg Minster in here, our sergeant for the team, but consistent with their work ethics, they're out doing a 36-location parole search this morning, so I thought I'd better leave him over there with them to get that done. So we're real proud of them and the good work they're doing. I've long felt that we have two main problems here in Lancaster, and those two main problems relating to Part 1 crime anyway are gangs and parolees. This parolee team, in my opinion, is one of the entities over there at Lancaster Station that is keeping us relatively stable where Part 1 crimes are concerned, because we know in these budgetary times we're having a tough time keeping patrol units out there the amount of time that we would want to, and these guys are really picking up the slack in terms of watching our parolees. I want to run down a couple of their accomplishments or some numbers just to give you an idea of how hard these guys are working. Since their inception in September of '09, they have searched 455 locations. Now, if you know the amount of work done in that, they've got to come up with operations plans. They've got to film once they, establish, a safe situation in the house. They got to film going in. They got to film going back out. If any force is used, they do force packages. I mean, it's a tremendous amount of work to do this. So they have really, really, really been out there and working these guys. They've made, out of those 455 locations, 246 parolee arrests. Okay, that's also a lot of work. 49% of those parole arrests were new charges, and the vast majority of those new charges had to do with narcotics. So what that's telling us is these guys are getting out of prison, and they are going right back to probably what put them in prison in the first place. In a variety, narco usage, we know, sure they can be charged with that, but it also leads to burglaries, it leads to robberies, it leads to all kinds of other types of crime to support their habits. So we know that, whatever the system is that they're being exposed to while they're in prison certainly isn't influencing them to stay away from the lifestyle that got them into trouble in the first place. A little bit of background here. We've got 1,400 parolees right now in the Lancaster area. Only 25 of those so far are non-revocable parolees. Now, that situation is going to get a lot more serious as we go along over the next 5 years, because there are plans, of course, to release hundreds of them. I'm not sure exactly how many we're going to get in this area, but they present some, as we've already been told, Lee, these people cannot be monitored. We're finding that they're released to us here in Lancaster, and they're given a specific address, and then our team goes out to check on them at those addresses, and they're not there. They are held to no standards, and we can't, even when we do find them, and we often do a lot of follow-up investigation to go find these NRPs, we can't update their new location in the system because they're not being monitored. Nobody cares. So, in essence, what they're doing is they're coming into the area, and they're moving off wherever they please. Some of them are going to other states, but we can't. They're still on our list here in Lancaster. So as we get larger numbers of them out here in Lancaster, we're going to have increasing problems with them because they're very, very hard to find and monitor and keep them out of trouble. We've also found through statistics here in the Antelope Valley, 75 to 80% are rearrested within 3 years. That's what we're doing right now. But we're working them very, very hard. And again, we've got a whole team devoted to this. And one really positive result of the effectiveness of all this is that we have found, when we first started this team, many parolees living out here who are not assigned to this area. They did not have permission from their parole officers to be out here, but they moved out here. And with the inception of this team, the hard work they've done, and finding parolees that don't belong in the area, living with other parolees when they're hitting these locations, they've really driven a lot of those out of there, and they're not finding that problem anymore. So since September, at the very least we've done is, because the team's effective and because they're out there, parolees from out of this area have no desire to move into this area. So that's been a real positive effect. I think, in essence, what the team has done with their hard work is they've sent a message out there to all our parolees that if they're gonna live here in Lancaster, they're going to be held to standards. We're going to know what they're doing, and if they're reoffending, we're going to arrest them. And I really do. I think that's probably curbed a lot of their activities so far at this point, and I think we've got a lot better control of parolees in this area than other areas that don't have such a team out, holding them to standards. So that's where we stand right now. I just wanted you to know a little bit about that. Do you have any questions?
Those parolees that are assigned or come back out there, is that based upon the fact that they had initial residence here, or what makes them eligible to be assigned here to the city of
It's my
Lancaster?
understanding, I wish I had Gapel here to answer the question, but it's my understanding that yes, in general, they are released back to the areas where they offended.
A historical tie to the area. And that's an agreement that it was established a long time ago. What is the standard, Captain? Isn't it they have to be released back for sure to the county of origin?
The county of origin.
And then within our jurisdiction, we have a agreement with them that they have to have a historical tie back to our community. Yeah.
Except, we do have that,
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
no, we do have that. We've been having some problems with the state enforcing that agreement. So that's one of the ones we've been listed the help of Senator Runner on.
And again, the problem with, and we are going to have increasing numbers of these non-revocable parolees. You know, we're going to have no control of them. It's going to be very, very hard to find out where they are, to hunt them down and find out what they're up to. And we're finding that we're making many, many arrests already of NRPs once we do find out where they are.
Well, and in hearing what I heard, some of the comments, does that mean that there could be some that may come here, they're not precluded from coming here based on the fact that they never had been established residents here? For example, somebody's released from wherever, they potentially could come here, whether or not they resided here prior or not?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I would think that you know, in the past, the attraction of a little bit cheaper housing and things like that has brought them in. Both the Lancaster team work in Section 8 housing and some of these apartment complexes, and of course with the parolee apprehension team working them, what we're finding is that we've really, at least at this point, we believe, stopped the problem of parolees who have not been assigned to this area coming to this area.
And whether they're actually told to come to this area or not by other agencies out there would be a real concern.
I have a rhetorical question. If the city of Lancaster is arresting over 15,000 a year, correct?
Yes.
And the city of Palmdale is arresting over 12,000 a year. And then we have all those to go through our court system. And then they allow 1,000 new parolees to come in this area at a 75 to 80% recidivism rate.
Right.
So we have to arrest an additional 800 people, plus all the people that we've been arresting, just to break even with our crime rate?
I would think so. Again, like I said, parolees have a tremendous effect on your Part 1 crime rate, and we can see, you know, the writing on the wall based on you know, their arrests once they're released here into the area, they get immediately back into the narcotics. So yeah, I think that would be pretty accurate.
When you say narcotics, do you include in that marijuana?
Marijuana, but it's mostly cocaine and methamphetamine that we're finding. Marijuana occasionally. And what we're finding also is that your typical, and we all know this, and Lee does too, having worked narcotics in the past, anytime you have a user of methamphetamine or cocaine, heroin also, and we're finding some of that too, they generally sell also to support their habit. So we're taking a lot of them for sales and furnishing.
So if we have all these arrests taking place and it costs us approximately $18,000 per person to arrest, where's the savings for us?
The savings? Non-existent.
So the state is passing all that cost back down to us.
That's been the idea, I believe, from the very beginning. That's been the whole idea behind these releases, is to transfer the responsibility for these people from the state down to the county and the cities.
So in addition to taking their $17 million from the redevelopment agency, they're also taking millions from us in public safety.
Oh, absolutely, no question.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
I do have a question. How many are on the parole apprehension team? And is that existing in Lancaster and Palmdale, or just in Lancaster?
No, just in Lancaster right now. Palmdale has not chosen to put one of those teams together, probably because of the budgetary and personnel problems. But yeah, we have 6 deputies and 1 sergeant on the team. That's not many, and I'll tell you what, they've done a heck of a job. I believe that they've really curbed, with all their hard work and all their activities, I think they've curbed parolee activity in the Lancaster area.
So do you think that if there's not a team in place in Palmdale, that the word gets out amongst the parolees that there is a team in Lancaster? Do they tend to leave the Antelope Valley, or do they tend to go to Palmdale and then kind of slip back over to Lancaster and stay within the Antelope Valley?
You know, for whatever reason, and we'd have to talk to state parole about this, we have more parolees assigned to Lancaster than what Palmdale gets. You know, we're at the area of about 1,500 now, and Palmdale has somewhere in the area of about 1,000. I'm not sure why that is, but Palmdale kind of replaces some of their activities that our parolee team is involved in with a variety of things. They'll do some parolee operations with their PAC team, with the North County GET team, and a few things like that. But they're not as consistent, because what we're doing is on a day-to-day basis, we're going out and locating these people as often as we possibly can. And if they're offending, then we arrest them. And I don't think Palmdale right now really has that consistent sort of team to get out there and actually contact these guys as often.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Did you guys want to leave the discussion on the criminal justice goals until the entire, would that be better?
I would suggest so.
Okay.
It seems like it makes sense to have a larger complement of your commission here.
Well, and the new one should be here for the reasons why. Okay. We're going to put the continued business back to next time. And on the staff presentations, Captain Hoos, can we get a presentation from you on like hot spots, what you're doing, and that kind of stuff on the meetings that we have?
Absolutely. If you want specifics, you want to know about crashes or crime or DUI arrests or...
All of it.
Just an overview I can do. All of it's fine. When would you like it?
At the next meeting?
All right, I will take a look. Thank you.
Thank you. Brett?
This portion of the agenda allows an individual the opportunity to address the Criminal Justice Commission on any item not on the agenda. State law prohibits the commission from taking action on items not on the agenda, and your matter will be referred to staff. Individual speakers are limited to 3 minutes each.
David Aber? Lyle, did you want to speak?
Good afternoon, commissioners, staff, and citizens. I got a couple issues. I want to welcome the new commissioner. Huh? Oh, just excuse me then. I've noticed an increase in graffiti in my neighborhood in the last 30 days. So just like to bring that to attention. I'm over on the west side. In case Captain Anderson would like to note that. Over off of 12th Street and 12th Street West off of Avenue K. Seems just in the last month there's just a ton all of a sudden. And we don't have a neighborhood watch on my street. My street's been pretty good per se, the street. But I think I'm going to go ahead and get that started and be the captain over there. Also, I'm here to donate my time to the commission any way I can and to the community to help you guys, effectively do a better job, or, anything I can do. Not that you're not doing a good job, but to help you continue to do a good job. That's basically it. I've got something I'm going to throw at you just because maybe something will become of it, maybe it won't. On March the 26th, I was at a groundbreaking at the Kaufman and Broad development out there with the BYD, and I was run out of there by 4 officers. And there's I guess it's a watch commander complaint that's in the works, and it's been a good 30 days and counting. And basically, I think maybe we're using resources for something that's not necessary. Simple question. We need to find out who instructed those officers to remove me. I wasn't doing anything that I should have been removed for. And I think that would help move the situation forward. I filed a claim against the city on this issue, and they rejected the claim, and I've got 6 months to file a lawsuit. And I'm trying to work through this the best way possible, but if I'm left with no other choice but to file that lawsuit, I have no problem with that either. But maybe this commission can get a simple answer to a question: who instructed Deputy Gonzalez and Riesling and the 2 motorcycle officers that I have not been able to come with their name? Simple question: who instructed them to remove me? The officer said to me when I spoke to him about 45 minutes later after I had been removed that he had been told I was causing a disturbance and to remove me. I asked him if he saw said disturbance. He said it was a lot of people, so I took that as no, and the lady with him also didn't respond. So we're still in that square of who gave that order. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Any commissioner comments? Mr. Kerr? David? My understanding is Sandy's been nominated to serve on the Criminal Justice Commission, and she does have a family history in law enforcement. Her dad was a commander at the CHP. Her husband's a parole agent. Probation officer, I'm sorry. And her daughter's a DA, so she has a lot of different stuff for that. And Mr. Greer is going to use his expertise in real estate to go on our, which commission is it?
Potentially the Architecture Review Committee.
Okay. And thank you for everything that you've done here. I really appreciate it. Okay, we stand adjourned till June 9th, 2010.